Hey y'all, welcome to the Southern Appalachian Herbal Podcast. I'm Judson Carroll and I'm an herbalist. I'm also a wild crafter, a gardener, and herb grower. I'm coming to you from high atop the beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina, just a stone's throw from the Tennessee line, overlooking the Pisgah National Forest. Absolutely surrounded by the bounty of God's green earth. I spent most of my life wandering these mountains and learning about plants from the old-timers and all sorts of characters. On this show, we'll talk about herbs and how to use them, how to find them, how to grow them, how to make preparations. We'll talk about a lot of things. We can also talk about permaculture, homesteading, foraging, and living off the land. Most anything, really. You can email me at southernappalachianherbs@gmail.com if you have a question or a comment. You can also contact me through the Grow Network, where I'm a regular contributor and a moderator for the forums. And my blog is, of course, southernappalachianherbs@blogspot.com. All right, y'all. I'm going to sit my guitar down and let's talk about herbs.
Hey y'all, welcome to this week's show. Today's going to be a wide-ranging and interesting show. I never plan my shows. I never think, well, I'm going to talk about this today, or I'm going to combine this subject with that one. It's always amazing to me how these disparate parts just come into an organized whole without any forethought at all. And today's show is going to be a fantastic example of that. The herb we're going to discuss is one you probably have in your kitchen right now. It's rosemary. Rosemary is a very popular herb, especially in Italian and French food, but throughout the world, really. And it's a powerful medicinal herb, really one of the herbs that you need in your herbal medicine cabinet. And we will get into all of that. The recipe for the week is going to be dandelion greens, because a couple of days ago I harvested about 5 pounds of them. I love dandelions in the first place. It's one of those things I kind of take for granted, though, because I live on a northwestern slope at around 5,000 feet elevation. The dandelions grow all throughout my property. I mean, there's tons of dandelions. And because of where I live, because they don't get too hot, because they tend to be shaded throughout the summer, I can eat dandelions from, April through October. No problem. I mean, that's when they start dying back around here. Then they don't get too bitter. They stay sweet. They're really nice. For most folks, though, dandelion is an early spring vegetable. And really this week, next week, in many parts of the country are going to be the last time until fall, really. And really only if it's new plants that just sprouted up. For the majority of the dandelions you're going to have this year, this is sort of like your last chance to get them. So I will get into that. But what made me think about it, and like I said, I never planned this stuff out. See, I just kind of graze on dandelions whenever I'm outside doing a little yard work, working in the garden, just walking the dog. I'll grab some dandelion greens and just eat them raw. And I'm very used to the taste of dandelion greens. And when I harvest them, it's almost like an afterthought. I go out, I grab a bag or a basket, and I just go out and I take my knife and I cut them off right above the base of the plant, and just pick a pound or two to fix up for supper or have for lunch. It's not something I prioritize. I don't schedule it. For many people in many cultures, it really is. These days in America, probably the only folks you're going to see picking dandelion greens are going to be newer Italian immigrants, maybe some Polish immigrants. I don't know why they've fallen out of favor, but the reason they're here is because our ancestors brought them here to be food and medicine as well. But last week, my all-time favorite chef, Jacques Pepin, put out one of his little videos. If you haven't seen these on YouTube, he doesn't have a cooking show per se anymore. I guess Jacques in his late 80s now. I mean, he's got to be kind of up in years. He just does like YouTube videos from home, and they're fantastic. They're just quick little 4 minutes to maybe 8 minutes at the longest. How to prepare whatever he's cooking that day for himself and his wife, or if he has his daughter and grandkids over, or a friend. And it's just really familiar to me because he looks and kind of talks and acts and thinks like the French side of my family. The recipes are recipes with which I'm generally familiar because, again, they're my family recipes just like they are his. And he's such a likable, affable, guy. I mean, he would be like anybody's ideal grandfather or something at this point. Just Chapapan is one of the coolest people to ever walk the face of the earth, as far as I'm concerned. So check out his new videos that he puts out like once a week on YouTube if you haven't seen them. The one he did last week was a wilted salad of dandelion greens, and it's something that I eat very often, something I had for some reason not thought to cook this year. So I went out about 2 days ago. I picked about 5 pounds of dandelion greens. I figured I'd go ahead and get a bunch of them while it was still spring. And I'm going to walk you through, in just a minute here on how to cook dandelion greens. But as I said, how the way things just all kind of come together. I'm talking about rosemary, rosamarino. This is like one of the classic Italian herbs. I'm talking about dandelion greens. And like I said, really the only people that are still foraging in America dandelion greens are weirdos like me, and hopefully you, if you're listening to my show, or first, second generation Italian immigrants, maybe some Central Europeans. That's about it, and it's such a shame. It's such a shame trying to eradicate the dandelion, which is one of the most healthy and useful plants God ever gave man. But I have a friend, speaking of Italy, she's really one of my dearest friends, and probably my best friend that I've never met in person. Known her for a couple years now, I guess. Her name is Alessa Brunelli. Now, Alessa, she comes from the Brunelli cheese family. If you were around, my family had a grocery store, so I knew immediately this last name. If you were around in the, 60s, 70s, 80s, early 90s, you will remember Brunelli Pecorino Romano cheese. Her grandfather was really the first person to make Pecorino a name brand in America. And her grandfather, father, brilliant businessmen, really quality conscious food people. And so is she. And that's, we get along so well because we're always talking food. Uh, Italians are very picky about their food. They always say there are two joys for an Italian that eats at someone else's table. One, enjoying the meal, and two, complaining about how the pasta was cooked. They are really sticklers about it. And of course, she's also a real stickler about the pronunciation of the Italian language. And of course, I don't pronounce it right. So I am purposefully saying her name, Alessa Brunelli, and I'm going to say a few Rosamarino and Pecorino Romano cheese so she can criticize me when she hears this. She's going to get a real kick out of giving me a hard time for even trying to pronounce Italian with a southern accent. But really great person. And kind of somewhat of a tragic story. Apparently, late 80s, going into the early 90s, the mafia really began trying to take over her family business. And they did gain ownership or possession, not rightful ownership, I guess you would say, of much of the business. Her father was fighting them, and let's say he died under suspicious circumstances. She has literally dedicated her life to trying to get justice for her family and regain control of the family company. And, this is someone I know very well. So I'm telling you, she's a very honest, hardworking person of integrity, a very devout Catholic, a very, very real and honest person. She's also she loves America. She went to school here. She's actually a MAGA Trump supporter, believe it or not. An Italian who loves, conservative American politics and great old movies like Gone with the Wind. But what I want to tell you is she has finally, after all this many years' work, gotten an opportunity to really take the bad guys to court. But at the same time, of course, they've been fighting back. And just before Christmas, she found out they had taken her house that she was living in and sold it to someone in another country. So, I mean, she's really fighting hard, well, for justice for her family and really just to keep her head above water at this point. And she is a very proud person, okay? She is, her family's from Umbria and she lives in Rome and she's feisty and proud and determined and she would never ask for charity. But she needs some money to help with the legal bills. She basically, like when someone puts up a legal defense fund, but of course she's not just going to ask for money. She's put together a t-shirt. It's a very pretty t-shirt. She actually has a background in fashion design. And it is on a site called bonfire.com. If you're inclined, if you would like to help someone out who is really deserving of help, this is not one of those I'm soliciting for some charity that I don't know anything about. This is someone who really, really deserves to be able to have her family business back that her grandfather and her father, really created so that she can leave it to the next generation. Right now, she has nieces and nephews that will not have what their grandparents and great grandparents intended because of the mob, because of the mafia, and a corrupt court system that is very influenced by the mafia. But it looks like she has a chance now to actually get this done. And she's put this together. It's bonfire.com/justice dash in Rome. No, /justice dash in dash Rome. Okay? So bonfire.com, justice in Rome. I will put the link in the show notes. But again, that's bonfire.com/justice dash in dash Rome. And it's a simple, nice quality shirt. And it has a wonderful quote on it. It is from Publius. I'm sure she's going to tell me it's not pronounced that way. Publius, I don't know. But it is Iustita Venitum Regina, with the translation under it. Justice is the queen of virtues. That's a quote from 166 BC. Very very famous and very meaningful quote. I think we can all agree. Justice is the queen of virtue. And it's what we're lacking very much in America right now when we're under a two-tiered system of justice where, the FBI has been, and the Justice Department have been weaponized against good patriotic Americans. You can kind of understand what she's going through in Italy, which has a bit of a reputation for judicial corruption, of course. So anyway, if you would like to help her out, please go to bonfire.com, Justice in Rome. Like I said, I'll put the URL down there. She's starting a blog, and she's going to tell the whole story. I've cautioned her and asked her actually not to do this because obviously she's putting her life in danger, but she's not backing down for anyone. If you remember Scarlett O'Hara in Gone with the Wind, just imagine Scarlett O'Hara with an Italian accent. They're about the same size, similar features and appearance, and the same tough as nails, fiery personality. Although Alyssa's actually a much nicer person. Actually Scarlett O'Hara was not that nice a person, honestly. I mean, let's be honest. Let's think about the movie. When it came out, it was actually boycotted by the United Daughters of the Confederacy because they did not want to be portrayed, essentially, by such a spiteful, cold-hearted person in the movies. I assure you, Alyssa is nothing like that. She's actually one of the most kind, warm-hearted people I've ever met. In fact, I was at a particularly low point, and she reached out to me as a complete stranger and offered compassion and support. And like I said, if you want to help somebody out, if you want a nice T-shirt, if you want a T-shirt that has a pretty cool quote on it that you can tell people what it means, go for it. I think it's a very good cause, a very good cause. And I'm telling you, good cheese too. Very good cheese. When she gets that company back in her control, we're going to once again have some of the finest foods from Umbria. The real traditional, that's the good stuff. I mean, sure, I like Southern Italian food. I like all the Mediterranean stuff. You can't beat the Roman food, but up there in Umbria where the weather's a little cooler and you got more pork and you got good wine and cheese, man, I mean, that's man food right there. That's Italian grandmother food. That's the kind of stuff you like, seriously. And really, probably the hardest. I mean, of course, in America we had this huge wave of immigrants from southern Italy in the 1900s. We don't get a lot of that kind of food in most Italian restaurants. You really, I mean, unless you live in a certain area or unless you actually have an Italian grandmother or something, you're gonna have to learn to cook it yourself. And it's well worth doing. Very, very much so. Really, that show, Lydia's Italy on PBS, her family was, well, a different region, but a little bit similar culture. In fact, I think Lydia's mother's family was from northern Italy, and her father's family, I think, actually came from Poland or Ukraine or something like that. So you see a more northern style in Lydia's cooking. And if you, I mean, ever watch that show, I mean, I definitely, and grab her cookbooks too, you'll see that is some darn good food. Seriously. And that, again, ties in perfectly with today's show. And I'm going to go ahead and get into today's recipe before I get to today's herb, which is as Italian as you get, um, the dandelion greens. So here's how I make my dandelion green salad. It's so called. It's a wilted salad. It's actually a cooked green. Uh, this is, I'm going to say, almost identical to how Jacques Pepin did his, only he uses anchovy paste in his dressing, and I don't normally use anchovy paste, but I may have some smoked sardines with it. So actually, I mean, similar. The flavors are so similar, and his family's from Lyon. My family is from Guiton. Uh, Not exactly close. I'm more like northern, going up into the Alps. So, but it's really just amazing to see how we have such similar flavors. So, dandelion greens. As I said, dandelion is super useful food. I've done a whole show on the medicinal use of dandelion. You can flip back through the archives and get this. But also, every part of the dandelion is edible. The root is usually used for tea or to make a coffee substitute or, such as that. The root's really the medicinal part, okay? The stems of dandelion are intensely bitter. Now, I have gotten used to that bitterness. I don't mind it. I may leave the stems on the greens. If you're not used to bitter foods, wild foods, and if you're cooking for someone else especially, take the stems off your leaves. Most of the bitterness is in the stems. The leaves are really more like a lettuce or an escarole, endive, whatever, chicory, um, radicchio, another good, bitter Italian salad green. But the leaves themselves are so mildly bitter that most people are not going to mind it at all. And once it's combined with the flavors in this dish, everybody's going to love it. So first of all, you want to go out and you want to get your nice fresh leaves. I would prefer to go on a dry day, but not in the heat of the day where they're going to get wilted. I want them nice and crisp. And, take leaves that don't have a lot of bug bites or damage or, whatever. So just get a nice bunch of greens. The other day while I was cooking, I also ran across several patches of dock. And so I got a bunch of red dock, which is, it's a little tougher than spinach, but it kind of has a spinachy flavor with a little bit of sourness to it. I got some of those and just threw it in the basket right with my dandelion greens. I also found a lot of very nice violets, so I grabbed some violets just to throw in, kind of decorate across the top. You don't have to do that, but it's nice, and there's a lot of nutrition in all those plants that you're not going to get from store-bought foods. I mean, this is a meal you can eat that's going to give you so many minerals and so much nutrition. It is also a tonic for the liver. And with the violets, at least, are going to help reduce inflammation, help with a little arthritis or aching muscles. Dandelion flowers can certainly be added, but you usually do want to pick your dandelions before they flower. There was some beautiful red clover I ran across, so I always grab a few red clover blossoms, just toss in. They're nice and sweet and mild. But when you get home and If you want to wash your greens, you can. If you don't have to. If they're a little wilted, just refresh them in some cold water. You don't even have to dry them because this is going to be a cooked salad essentially. And this is really more a salad in that broader sense of like the Old English, uh, salad greens, which usually meant cooked a vegetable or a pot herb, not necessarily a raw salad because the English aren't big on tossed salad. That's really more of a French thing, seriously. So anyway, gather up your greens, whether it's all dandelion or you've mixed in a few other things. Don't cook your flowers, hold them back. You're just going to want to put them on as a decoration, a garnish on top. And I got some spring onions because you got to have a little onion in anything like this. And bacon grease is the base of the dressing, so onions and bacon, of course. So get home and get your greens prepared and ready to cook. Get a pan or a pot. Use for sort of a big frying pan basically, and fry up some bacon. Now, interestingly enough, people ask me all the time, how do you make bacon? Because see, my French great-grandfather made wonderful bacon and cured country hams and sausage and all that. It's a real art that comes down through my family. And what is bacon? Well, bacon is essentially just a pork belly that's been cured. Back a couple hundred years ago, when my family was first doing it, it would have just been simply cured with salt and black pepper. Black pepper is added to the salt because pepper keeps the flies and other bugs off. It does give flavor, but salt is what really draws the moisture out of the meat and preserves the meat. So it would have, you would have killed the pig, the hogs in late fall, and you'd have gotten your hams and bacon about the time of the first frost, ready to hang up because they didn't have refrigeration. So you would take your meat and for anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks, basically a month, you would just pack it in salt and pepper. And really the pepper would be optional because you're going to, well, with the hams, but not for the bacon. With the hams, you can wait on the pepper. But anyway, pack it in salt. It's going to pull out a ton of water, right? After it is cured in the salt, it would be hung in a shaded room where the sun wasn't going to hit it, where it would be protected from rodents and insects with some screening or whatever. And before screening, they of course would put cloth over it. They put cheesecloth. The way country hams come in cloth bags. That's the reason for that. With the hams, what you would do is then take salt, pork fat, and black pepper, and even red pepper. That's really good too, and it does the same thing. And even garlic powder if you want, but that's more of like a Louisiana thing. But anyway, in eastern North Carolina, in the mountains of North Carolina, it was usually just salt and black pepper and fat and rub down the whole thing with it after it had come out of the salt. So you had this layer of salt and pepper essentially over it that would help keep the bugs off and give a lot of flavor. And you'd hang it in this shady room where it got plenty of air circulation. You'd let it cure, air dry essentially for a few more weeks or months. Actually, you could go a couple of months like that. And then it would be cold smoked over, hickory or another flavorful smoke. That is your country ham. At some point, sugar became available, and people started adding sugar, and that's more your Virginia-style country ham, your Smithfield type of ham, which is salt and sugar cured, because sugar also pulls water out of meat. This is essentially a way of preserving food, right? With bacon, you just cure it in your salt, hang it, smoke it, slice it, use it. Yes, you can do salt and sugar and all that. The big change was when saltpeter became available. The saltpeter, sodium nitrite, sodium nitrate, curing salt or pink salt really takes all the danger of spoilage out of the equation. You mix in a small amount of pink salt with your regular salt, sea salt, whatever kind of salt you're using, and that not only preserves the meat, it gives it that reddish pink flavor we associate with bacon and ham. But a couple hundred years ago, they wouldn't have even had that. Their bacons and ham would have had a grayish color to it. Now we've come to associate ham and bacon with the reddish color. Well, that's it. I mean, it's literally just salt cured. If it's not smoked, it's pancetta. It's Italian style bacon, right? If it's smoked, it's American style bacon. You take that and you slice it, fry it up in a pan. When it's done to your liking, it's rendered out a lot of fat. Take your dandelion greens, etc., and put in there. That's it. Sprinkle a little salt over the greens. Turn them until they've kind of cooked down, until they're tender enough for your taste. Take one out and try it every now and then. If you remove all the stems, they're going to wilt down very quickly. If you leave the stems in, they're going to need a few more minutes. And then the stems are actually tough and chewy. So, I mean, really, I would leave them in just because I kind of enjoy the bitter flavor, and I can be a little more rustic with my cooking, or lazy, you might say. But for if you're cooking for someone else, or if you like your food more tender, definitely remove the stems, definitely. And that's it. You've cooked your greens in bacon fat with a little bit of salt, and now they're ready to plate. And you sprinkle on some vinegar and dig in. That's in its simplest form, right? Well, you can also add some crushed red pepper to the greens while they're cooking, a little black pepper, of course. You could add Creole seasoning if you want to do that. It's a little, okay, it's a little heavy flavor, I know. The spring onions, of course, I forgot to mention that. Cook your spring onions with your greens. You could add regular onions. You could add garlic. You could add ramps, which is what I like to do in the spring. Um, you could add whatever you like to it. A little parsley, a few herbs. But I say kind of keep it simple. If you didn't want to use plain vinegar, you can do a very nice vinaigrette. I think what goes better with mustard, with dandelion greens than anything, is a mustard vinaigrette. Whenever you have a jar of mustard or a bottle of mustard, and you pretty much gotten to the end of it, you can't really get it out anymore to put on your hot dog or whatever, save it. Mustard is a good flavoring and an emulsifier. Into that bottle, add some olive oil and some vinegar, salt and pepper, herbs of your choice. Rosemary is a perfect herb to go in there. Crushed red pepper. I think I said salt and pepper already, but parsley, basil, any herb, marjoram, thyme, any herb you like in a salad dressing, put it in there. You could add a little bit of crushed raspberry or something if you want a little sweet. You could add a little bit of honey if you wanted that sort of honey mustard flavor, which I'm not actually a fan of. But if you like it, go for it. Shake it up, and the mustard will cause the oil and vinegar to emulsify and make a nice kind of creamy, thick dressing, as opposed to just being oil and vinegar, which never combine. They separate. You can shake them for a minute, and they're kind of going to come together, but they come right apart unless you have a little mustard in there. Dandelion greens dressed with a mustard vinaigrette is fantastic. Goes so well with the bacon and the onions and the bitterness of the greens. Then top the salad how you like. Like I said, I like smoked sardines or any kind of smoked fish, boiled eggs, just sliced and put on there. Cheese, definitely grated cheese. And you could do anything from Parmesan or Pecorino Romano to pepper jack. Have fun with it. It's your salad. Enjoy it. Put some blue cheese on there. That's my favorite. Feta. Feta goes fantastic on there. Feta and bacon always combine so well. Crumble your bacon up across the top of it and dig in. And it's healthy. It's one of the most nutritious things you can eat. There's nothing unhealthy about bacon fat, by the way. But dandelion greens are probably second only to stinging nettles in nutritional value. And they're truly very, very good for you. Very, very tasty. And yeah, that salad is a real treat. I mean, that combination of the bitter, the salty, and the fatty, and the bacon, and the smoky, and the bright spring flavors. And you can take those fresh flowers and just kind of put them across the top as decoration, and they'll give it, brighten it up a little bit, make it a little more, I don't know, light in flavor, I guess. Really good. Really very good. So now we will get into the rosemary, the rosmarino, the Rosmarinus officinalis. So, medicinal use of rosemary, which is one of my favorite culinary herbs as well. I love to bake sourdough bread. I love focaccia bread. Probably more than, at least as much as I love a good pizza or something. I love focaccia bread. Focaccia bread is heavily seasoned with rosemary. You dip it in some herbed oil as you eat it, and it's so good, so good. Medicinal use of rosemary. Rosemary is a commonly grown herb in the herb garden as a domestic remedy, used especially as a tonic and a pick-me-up when feeling depressed or mentally tired or nervous. Rosemary, the scent actually, has a remarkable and unique quality of action on the brain. It helps with memory. It's actually been experimented with, like helping Alzheimer's patients. It helps with depression. It helps with nervousness, irritability, anxiety. Rosemary is a wonderful, wonderful herb in that regard. Research has shown that the plant is rich in volatile oils. Let me see. Yes, I am quoting Plants for the Future. I want to give them their due. They did an excellent uh, entry on this. So Plants for the Future is telling us this. It is rich in volatile oils, flavonoids, and phenolic acids, which are strongly antiseptic and anti-inflammatory. Now, here's why rosemary is also very important. It is strongly antibiotic, antiseptic, and has some antiviral properties due to rosmarinic acid. Rosmarinic acid has actually been found useful in treating toxic shock, whilst the flavonoid diosmin, I guess, is reputedly more effective than rutin in reducing capillary fragility. So it can also help prevent against strokes and aneurysms and all kinds of stuff like that. The whole plant is antiseptic, antispasmodic, aromatic, astringent, cardiac. It actually helps the heart. It actually helps, it helps with circulation. It can help with angina and chest pains and all kinds of stuff like that. It kind of helps strengthen a heart as well. Carminative, that means it helps settle the stomach. That's how it got associated with food. That's how it became a culinary herb. It could help preserve meats, like where I was just explaining to you how to make an American style smoked ham. And I mentioned Italian pancetta. They also make incredible hams. But one of the more interesting recipes I got from some Italian cooks was to take pork chops and rub them down in rosemary, oregano, and garlic, salt and pepper. Um, Put them in a little olive oil and red wine and and a lot of salt, let them cure in the fridge overnight, and it actually makes like it's like oh yeah, I remember they make what they call porchetta or porchetta. I can't remember if it's porchetta or porchetta. Those are the herbs that are used in it, and that's actually a way they used to preserve meat back in like ancient Rome. You're talking a very hot climate where meat spoils very quickly, and they found all these antiseptic, antibiotic herbs like rosemary and oregano, etc., and garlic, of course, would help preserve the meat. So that's the ancestor to all the wonderful salamis and pepperonis and capicola, and, mortadella, and all the bologna, even. All those wonderful deli meats that I can't live without. I absolutely love cured meats, but the salamis or the salumi, the salameria, they that's the ancestor. It doesn't come from trying so much to flavor meat. It comes from trying to preserve meat. And it just happens to be through the grace of God that this wonderful tasting cured meat was also how it was preserved. So anyway, you take your pork chops and you season them up like that, let them sit in the fridge overnight, take them off and just kind of wipe them off a little bit, pop them in under the broiler, pop or hot oven or a grill, fantastic on the grill. You can absolutely add some sun-dried tomatoes to that. That's one of the best things. I mean, honestly, you get that herbed, cured overnight pork chop, grilled up or broiled with a nice pile of mashed potatoes. You're going to be a happy camper. I'm telling you. You're going to be, or hey, put some of those dandelion greens beside it. Really, dandelion greens go great with pork. I mean, it's a match made in heaven, dandelions and pork. Anyway, so I said it was carminative and cholagogue, settles stomach. Diaphoretic helps with fevers. Emmenagogue, it brings on menses. Nervine, it settles the nerves. Calms the nerves, I guess I should say. Stimulant, it stimulates the mind. Actually, it stimulates digestion and is a bit of a cardiotonic. Stomatic, again, it settles the stomach, and tonic in general. An infusion of the flowering stems made in a closed container to prevent the steam from escaping is an effective treatment for headaches. Yes, it has been found useful for migraines even. Um, Colds, colic, flus, nervous diseases. A distilled water from the flowers is used as an eye wash. The leaves can be harvested in spring or summer, used fresh or dried for later use. Not to be used in large amounts for pregnant women. It can cause a miscarriage. Uh, but the oil can be added to liniments. It's rubefacient. It helps with arthritis. Really good. Rubbed into the temples. used especially for migraines and bad headaches. Um, and it's considered in aromatherapy to be a very stimulant herb. So obviously, there's a lot to unpack when it comes to rosemary. We can go back to 5000 BC and find that rosemary was mentioned in cuneiform stone tablets. Where was that? Babylon, Assyria, somewhere like that. I mean, it's literally one of the oldest herbal remedies known to man, and it's kind of become popular again because people started using it to help with COVID. It has good. Um, it's good to help prevent respiratory infections or to help treat respiratory infections. Rosemary and oregano both can have some. Well, they can be a little harsh actually. The oil by itself, so you wouldn't want to cut it with a neutral oil. But it has antiviral properties. It has antiseptic properties. It has antibiotic properties. The same reasons these herbs were used to preserve meat um, make them good to help preserve our health. And they taste delicious. It was used in the burial rites of ancient Egypt, again, like to help preserve the body as in part of mummification. It was written by Pliny the Elder and Dioscorides. I mean, this is one of the most storied herbs in history, as well as being delicious, and it's been used in many perfumes. It smells so good. Pliny the Elder listed 18 remedies using rosemary. He listed two kinds of rosemary. One of which he said the leaves have the odor of frankincense, essentially. But he said the root applied fresh affects the cure of wounds, prolapse of the rectum. Um, Now, I do not know what candy lamata is, but that was one he said. And he put it in with prolapse of the rectum and piles, which is hemorrhoids. So it's probably something for, it's those horribly disgusting toilet paper commercials say down there. Have you seen those awful commercials? I mean, if there was ever a reason to turn off the TV and not watch it, these toilet paper commercials were some woman saying that her down there is harder to clean than baked on spaghetti. I don't know what the hell's wrong with that woman, but let me tell you, she's dressed up like a doctor, and I wouldn't let her in the room with me, much less near me. And there's some other guy saying his down there gets more raw than an oyster bar. This is disgusting. I mean, we used to at least have some standards of decency in this country. If you were eating, here's sort of like my basic scale for knowing what's appropriate to be on television or not. If I'm trying to eat supper and that commercial comes on and it makes me so nauseous I have to stop eating, it shouldn't be on television. I also include all these like really violent crime dramas with all this like graphic autopsy footage. I'm not watching that junk. I mean, not while I'm eating, and actually I have no interest in crime dramas at all. It could be a good old mystery, but this like NCIS, CSI, whatever. That's garbage. I don't watch that stuff. I'm sorry if you like it, but I don't want to see the worst aspects of human nature as entertainment. The Bible says, look on those things that are good and beautiful and all that. And then, of course, like, Hawaii 5-0 and Magnum, we'll just call it Magnum Pi because the comma is no longer there. That when, Tom Selleck did it, there's no longer a comma and two periods. It used to be Magnum PI, now it's just Magnum Pi. Anyway, the storyline's the same every episode. Somebody gets kidnapped. Somebody gets kidnapped. I mean, talk about being bad for tourism in Hawaii. Yeah, they show these beautiful scenes and all these, gorgeous women in bikinis, but it's like, go to Hawaii, get kidnapped. Okay, well, oh, fine, I'm not going to Hawaii. I mean, seriously. Anyway, I have wandered off on a tangent, haven't I? All right, so back to Pliny the Elder. And by the way, and it's also what I used to say about, you remember Jessica Fletcher? She would do Murders She Wrote, Cabot Cove, Maine. It's like, don't go to Cabot Cove, Maine. I mean, a town with a population of 100 and everybody gets killed there, like, every single week, or if she travels anywhere, somebody's going to die. I would not have her as a house guest. Anyway, it's like what was it? I think it was the first episode of Friends. Monica was saying that when she was a kid, she thought Gunpoint was the name of a town. You know, man taken hostage at gunpoint. She's like, don't go to gunpoint. Anyway, he said the juice of the plant as well as the root is curative of jaundice. It does have a tonic effect on the liver. And such diseases as require detergents. I'm not exactly sure what he means. I think he's probably talking the antiseptic quality of the herb, which we would not call a detergent now. It is useful also for the sight. It has been given as a drink for inveterate diseases of the chest. That's the cardiotonic aspect of it. And it also kind of helps clear the lungs somewhat. And with wine and pepper for affections of the uterus, it also acts as an emmenagogue and is used with a meal of darnel as a liniment for gout. Now, darnel is a really interesting plant. It grows among wheat. It is the weed actually mentioned in the Bible where it says the enemy went and sowed the wheat field with weeds and you know, in an attempt to ruin the harvest of the farmer. It's an allegory about the devil, but darnel has a long association with the devil and witchcraft because bread baked with darnel is hallucinogenic. It would cause people to have visions and sometimes nightmarish visions, or it could make them more susceptible to suggestion. And it was used in many witchy magic potions to manipulate people, to scare the crap out of them, to make them think they were seeing demons, or to make them more susceptible to suggestion. So in this case, it's interesting that he was actually using darnel topically along with rosemary as a liniment for gout, which is just again shows you there is no such thing as an evil plant or a useless plant. They all have a purpose and they're all here for a reason. You just got to learn how to use them, whether it's a dandelion or darnel. It acts also as a detergent upon freckles. So he was saying it would help, I guess, bleach the skin, get rid of freckles, and is used as an application in diseases which require calorifics or sudorifics, and for convulsions. Calorifics. Let's see. Sudorific, if I remember, is wound healing. Calor would probably come from the word heat. We think of a calorie as having essentially enough fuel or nutrition in it to raise the temperature of water by 1 degree. I'll look it up, and if it's anything interesting, I'll tell you about it next week. But also good for convulsions. Remember, I told you it was anti-spasmodic. The plant itself is, or else the root, is taken in wine to increase the milk. So it's also a galactagogue, increases the mother's milk. And the leaves and stem of the plant are applied with vinegar to scrofulous sores. Used with honey, they are very useful for a cough. And yes, you will find rosemary in many old cough remedies. Dioscorides said, and he talks about a lot about the history of the various names in different places and actually how to identify it and all that. He said it is warming and cures jaundice. It is boiled with water and given to drink before exercises. And he who exercises bathes and is drenched with wine. And it is also mixed with remedies for the removal of fatigue and in ointments. As I said, it's a tonic and a stimulant. And of course, the Romans were very interested in athletics, and there's a long association with rosemary being used both as a stimulant to help reduce muscle inflammation, joint pain, and to clear the mind for thinking. Rosemary was one of the herbs grown in the physic gardens of the Benedictines. That's why it's called Rosemary officinalis. Officinalis means it was in the officina, which was the apothecary of the monastic medicine. It was mandated. It's another one that was mandated to be grown by the Holy Roman Emperor Charlemagne. Abbot Walafrid Strabo, who was a Catholic priest who was the tutor to Charlemagne's grandchildren, who wrote the first herbal of the Christian era, included rosemary in his book Hortulus. He said, "Would it not be a shame if this spicy herb escaped the attention of the gatherer for the household apotheca, or apothecary, your medicine cabinet, right? Rosemary is an excellent stomachic. Prepared as a tea, it cleanses the intestines from phlegm, gives a good appetite and good digestion. Whoever likes to see the medicine glass, this comforter in illness, shining on his table, let him fill it with rosemary tea and take from 2 to 4 tablespoons morning and evening." So he's saying use it as a general tonic to stay in good health. The stomach will soon become sensible, i.e., it would not stick fast much longer in phlegm. Rosemary wine taken in small doses has also proved an excellent remedy against heart infirmities. It operates in a sedative manner, and in cases of heart dropsy, it works strongly on removal through the urine. Such wine renders the same service in dropsy in general. Very important. Okay, this is rosemary steeped in wine. He's saying it's good for edema, congestive heart failure, or edema, or dropsy as they used to call it, perhaps even an enlarged heart. That's something that's pretty much epidemic these days. And modern medicine, their diuretics can be a little dangerous, a little too strong. Uh, this would be a good thing to look into and maybe incorporate into your diet as a preventative so that you don't even get to that point of needing something stronger. But either way you look at it, good to know because it's a stomachic, it's good for the liver, it's good against colds and flus and coughs. And if it helps the heart in that way as well, hey, definitely look at rosemary. And it tastes delicious. Against both complaints, 3 or 4 tablespoons or a small wine glass full of this pleasant drink are taken daily, morning and evening. The preparation of this wine is exceedingly simple. Hey, he is going to tell us. I forgot. A handful of rosemary is cut up as small as possible, put into a bottle, and good, well-kept wine poured on it. White wine is preferable. Even after half a day's standing, it may be used as rosemary wine. The same leaves may be used a second time. So he's literally saying just take your rosemary, chop it fine, and steep it in wine, and within a day it becomes useful. Approximately 1100 years later, rosemary wine was still prominent in the practice of monastic medicine, recommended by Brother Aloysius. Rosemary, he said, used for stomach disorders, promotes digestion, stimulates appetite, cleanses the stomach, recommended for fainting, dizziness, stroke, diarrhea, mucus, heart complaints, hydrothorax, dropsy, to strengthen the nerves, expel gas, as a diaphoretic for kidney and liver disorders, rheumatism, and edema. So that was, let's see, Brother Aloysius. He was Father Nape's protege, and yeah, he really gives us like the most modern official use of monastic medicine that developed between 300 AD and 1900, I guess, 1920. So I mean, it's a wonderful, wonderful resource, and of course, it all has its roots in the Greek and Roman and Jewish and Egyptian and Babylonian herbalism. Gerard, as well as the Germanic tradition in Central Europe and all that, but I don't need to get into all that right now. I've written books on it. If you're interested, you can read my book, Christian Herbal Medicine, History and Practice, and get the full story. Gerard, 1500s England, said of rosemary, rosemary is given against all fluxes of blood, that's internal bleeding or bloody diarrhea. It is also good, especially the flowers thereof, for all infirmities of the head and brain proceeding from a cold or moist cause. For they dry the brain, quicken the sense and memory, and strengthen the sinewy parts. Well, of course, they don't actually dry the brain, but they do help dry up nasal congestion and help with headaches and all that. So you can kind of see where he was going with that. The herbalist Serapio, or I guess you would say the physician, witnessed that rosemary is a remedy against the stuffings of the head, well, we just explained, that cometh through coldness of the brain. If a garland thereof be put about the head, whereof, another ancient physician, Aben Messu, giveth testimony. So again, he's saying just the scent of rosemary was good for the sinuses and headaches and all that. Distilled water of the flowers of rosemary being drunk at the morning and evening, first and last, taketh away the stench of the mouth and breath. And it has antiseptic properties. It's a very good mouthwash, actually. And maketh it very sweet. If there be added thereto, to steep or infuse for certain days, a few cloves, mace, cinnamon, and aniseed. So that's an ancient breath-freshening mouthwash. As I've mentioned many times, people in 1500s England had really bad teeth, so they were always concerned about bad breath. And toothaches, of course. The Arabians and other physicians do write that rosemary comforteth the brain, the memory, the inward sense, and restoreth speech unto them that are possessed with the dumb palsy. In other words, if you had a stroke that affects your speech, they use rosemary to help bring the speech back. You it strengthens the capillaries, it calms the nerves, maybe, right? Could be useful. May not be, I don't know. Especially the conserve made of the flowers of rosemary and sugar, um, being taken every day fasting. So they actually use it as a little candy, and you take it on an empty stomach. He mentioned it was good to provoke urine, open the stoppings of the liver, and the milt being sperm, actually. So I guess he believed it helped perhaps with, I don't know, prostate inflammation. It could have. Um, Tragus writeth that rosemary is a spice in German kitchens and other cold countries, and further said that wine boiled with rosemary, taken of women troubled, with the whites and other menstrual issues, helpeth them rather if they fast 3 or 4 hours after. Okay, Elizabethan English, a little bit difficult, but anyway, it was used for several female issues, female complaints, as they used to call them. Um, the whites are a discharge. I don't need to get into graphic detail on that. Anyway, this was used by women taken boiled in wine, fasting. So again, we're just basically talking on an empty stomach. The flowers, again, made into sort of a candy, comfort the heart and make it merry, quicken the spirit, and make it more lively. The oil of rosemary, chemically drawn, comforteth the cold, weak, and feeble brain in a most wonderful manner. So again, it brings clarity, it brings mental clarity, and lifts the mood a little bit. He talks about many places it was used in the the British Empire, specifically parts of the Middle East in the time, and in different parts of the world that they were exploring and trading with. And we don't really need to get into all of that, but we'll go back forward about 100 years to Culpeper. And he said it was an herb of the sun, and he means it's a hot, dry herb, essentially. He said it is very much used for both inward and outward diseases, for the warming and comforting heat. It helps all cold diseases, both of the head, stomach, liver, and belly. When we said earlier a calorific, and I said it probably has to do with heating, I think I'm right. I mean, it was seen by herbalists at that time as a warming herb. The decoction thereof in wine helps the cold distillation of rheum into the eyes. That means when your eyes are watering and mucousy, essentially. Um, and when you wake up, there's that crusty mess there and your vision's blurry. He's saying it helps with that. Okay, and helps all other cold diseases of the head and brain, as well as the giddiness or swimminess therein. He means dizziness. Giddiness used to mean dizziness, not necessarily someone just laughing a lot. Drowsiness or dullness of the mind and the senses. He said it helped with stupidness. So, if you're stupid, have some rosemary. I don't know. The dumb palsy again, which he's saying is probably a stroke that affects the tongue, or loss of speech, lethargy, falling sickness. Falling sickness was epilepsy. So he said it was good for epilepsy even. To be both drank and the temples bathed therewith. It helps the pain of the gums and teeth. Bad breath, I'll just make it short on that. It helps a weak memory, quickens the symptoms. It is very comfortable to the stomach and to all cold griefs thereof. Helps both retention of meat and digestion. It means it helps you digest your food and helps with nausea, essentially. Um, the decoction or powder of it being taken in wine was what he thought was good for the appetite. It is a remedy for the windiness of the stomach, bowels, and spleen, and it expels it powerfully. It helps with flatulence, in other words. It helps those that are liver grown, inflamed liver, by opening the instructions thereof. It helps dim eyes and procure clear eyesight. The flowers thereof being taken while it is flowering every morning fasting. So eating the flowers on an empty stomach with bread and salt. I guess you would use them sort of as like put them on your toast, basically. Both Dioscorides and Galen say that well, we've already covered them. Well, we didn't get Galen. Okay, said, if a decoction be made thereof of water, and they that have the yellow jaundice exercise their bodies directly after taking thereof, it will certainly cure them. So they use it as a remedy for jaundice or other liver ailments. And I guess as a hot herb, it probably increased sweating as well. Yeah, we knew it was diaphoretic. So you would kind of urinate and sweat the toxins out. The flowers, a conserve made of the flowers, basically a conserve is almost like a jam. I mean, it's, something you can spread on toast. Very nice. Are seemingly good to comfort the heart and to expel the contagion of the pestilence. To burn the herb in houses and chambers corrects the air in them. It was burned essentially as an incense, and the antiseptic properties, they said it would, probably help prevent contagious diseases from spreading. Both the flowers and leaves are very profitable for women that are troubled with the whites. We just discussed that. If being taken daily. The dried leaves shred small and taken in a pipe as tobacco, helpeth those that have any cough or consumption by warming and drying the thin distillations which cause those diseases. In other words, it would help sort of like as an expectorant to loosen the lungs to help get rid of congestion. The leaves are very much used in bathings and made into ointments or oil, and are singularly good to help cold, benumbed joints, sinews, or members. The chemical oil drawn from the leaves and flowers is a sovereign help for all those diseases aforesaid. To touch the temples and nostrils were 2 or 3 drops for all diseases of the head and brain spoke thereof. In other words, if you got a stuffy head, a lot of congestion, or a bad headache, the oil of the rosemary on the temples and at the nostrils, like you might use Vicks Vapor Rub or something, very effective. It is actually a remarkably good remedy. When I was in college, I would use rosemary before a test to help sharpen my mind and make sure my memory was good. I I went from being, well, put it this way, I went from being a D student in high school to I had a 3.98 GPA for almost the entire time I was in college. Why was that? Well, one, I really resented being forced to learn things that I didn't have an interest in. I mean, I was a rebellious kid, so I didn't try. I just got by. I did well enough just to get a barely passing grade in high school, and I was kind of a bit of a juvenile delinquent, I guess you would say. But by the time I got to college and I got to choose what classes I could take, yeah, I mean, for one thing, I just was so much more interested in what I was learning, and no one was forcing me to do anything. And at the University of Georgia, they didn't even take attendance or anything. They said, if you want to pass the class, you're going to show up, and if you don't, you're just wasting your money, go home. And yeah, it totally fit my style of learning. And I had a wonderful time, and I made great grades, and there were a few herbs I would use before a test. I would use rosemary. I would use ma huang, Chinese ephedra, a couple of things like that, and I'd be good and sharp. And yeah, I pretty much knocked it out of the park. I mean, seriously. But he did warn that the use of the oil, as I mentioned before, must be done with discretion, for it is very quick and piercing. I've said many times, don't use essential oils by themselves. They will burn you. They can be quite toxic, in fact. And it's one you want to cut with a little olive oil or something. And he said, take whatever quantity you will get from the flowers and put them in a strong glass, closed and stopped with a fine linen cloth over the mouth, and turn the mouth down into another strong glass, which being set in the sun, and oil would distill down into the lower glass, to be preserved as precious for diverse uses, both inward and outward, as a sovereign balm to heal the diseases before mentioned, to clear dim sights, and to take away spots, marks, and scars in the skin. Essentially, that's his very simple, easy to use. You can make it yourself, little oil distillation system. I think you'll find it quite useful. Miss Grieve tells a lot about the history. She says the ancients were well acquainted with this shrub. It had a reputation for strengthening the memory, and on this account, it became the emblem of fidelity for lovers. It's it's a language of flowers, if you remember your Shakespeare, and rosemary is fidelity or fide in Latin, faithfulness. So of lovers. Being true to each other, I guess we would say. It holds a special position among other herbs from the symbolism attached to it. Not only was it used at weddings, but also at funerals, for decking churches and banquet halls, at festivals, and used as an incense in religious ceremonies and in magical spells. At weddings, it was entwined in a wreath worn by the bride, being first dipped into scented water. Anne of Cleves, we are told, wore such a wreath at her wedding. A rosemary branch, richly gilded and tied with silken ribbons of all colors, was presented to wedding guests as a symbol of love and loyalty. Together with an orange stuck with cloves, it was given as a New Year's gift. Allusions to this custom are found in Ben Jonson's plays, and many other sources. The orange stuck with cloves is what we call a pomander. Wonderful scent. People would store it with their clothes. It helps keep bugs out, for one thing. And it was also a great sign of wealth. A great sign of wealth. Because at this point, oranges were coming from Seville, Spain, or perhaps Sicily, or the Middle East. They were not grown, of course, in England. And cloves were an exotic spice coming in from Asia and the Middle East. And for rosemary, which was a shrub that anybody could grow in their yard, to be put on the same level as a pomander of orange and cloves actually shows you what esteem this herb was held in. Miss Anne Pratt says that, but it was not among the herbalists and apothecaries merely that rosemary had its reputation for peculiar virtues. The celebrated Doctor of Divinity Roger Hackett did not disdain to expatiate on its excellence in the pulpit in a sermon in which he entitles A Marriage Present, which was published in 1607. He says, speaking of the powers of rosemary, it overtoppeth all the flowers in the garden, boasting man's rule. It helpeth the brain, strengthening the memory, and it is very medicinable for the head. Another property of rosemary is it affects the heart. Let this rosmarinus, this flower of man, in signage, in sign? Yeah, I'm going to go with in sign, written in an Old English way. Your wisdom, love, and loyalty to be carried not only in your hands, but in your heart and head. So rosemary had strong significance in England in the 1600s or so. Sir Thomas More, St. Thomas More, actually, even wrote, as for rosmarine, I let it run all over my garden wall, not only because my bees love it, but because it is the herb sacred to remembrance, and therefore to friendship, whence a sprig of it hath a dumb language that maketh it the chosen emblem of our funerals, wakes, and our burial grounds. St. Thomas More is a real hero of mine, and he was quite a good gardener, as well as were most noblemen of the time. Now, there's also, conversely, an old saying that was mentioned in the Treasury of Botany. This is a very old book. I'm thinking 1500s, 1400s. There is a vulgar belief in Gloucestershire and other countries that rosemary will not grow well unless where the mistress is master. And so touchy are some of the lords of creation upon this point, that they have more than once had reason to suspect them of privately injuring a growing rosemary in order to destroy this evidence for their want of authority. So quite the opposite of what was said earlier. There was sort of this idea that where rosemary was planted in the garden, the woman would rule the house, and the man was going to be weak and henpecked. So who knows where that came from? But I think I think we don't have to worry about that so much. I don't think, considering how much the Well, at least the Italians use rosemary and many others, and how popular it is in American cuisine now as well. It was also used in Christmas decorations. And in fact, Herrick wrote there was a saying around Christmas: down with the rosemary and so, down with the bales and mistletoe, down with the holly, ivy, and all, wherewith ye deck your Christmas hall. So the rosemary was as much used as holly and ivy and mistletoe in in a few centuries ago. It was used in place of more costly incenses such as frankincense and myrrh. The Spaniards actually revere it as an herb dedicated to the Blessed Virgin Mary, and they call it the pilgrim's flower in both Spain and Italy. It had a legendary reputation of protecting pilgrims from evil spirits and witches. And the Sicilians believed that young fairies taking the forms of snakes hid in its branches. So the fairies lived in rosemary. I don't know. No idea. Uh, hey, it gets a little hot in Sicily. Maybe they're out in the sun too long. You could see some fairies if you've been out in the sun too long. Trust me, North Carolina, in the eastern part of the state, it gets up to 110. I've had a couple of heat strokes. I could definitely see some things like fairies hiding in rosemary. I think if I'd been out in the sun of Sicily too long. It was an old custom to burn rosemary in sick chambers and French hospitals. In the time of Miss Greaves' writing, they still burn rosemary to fumigate the room. And she also said in Wales it was still a custom in the 1930s. Another old sort of quasi-religious legend said that it could grow to the exact height of the Savior that Jesus was when he walked the earth, and that it would increase for 33 years, which was the length of his life on earth, and would never grow beyond that point. I haven't had a rosemary plant for 33 years, and I don't have ideal conditions anyway. In fact, it's rather hard to grow rosemary where I live, but it can be done. There's a tradition that Queen Philippa's mother, the Countess of Hainault, sent the first plants of rosemary to England, and in a copy of an old manuscript in the library of Trinity College, Cambridge, the translator says that rosemary was unknown in England until the Countess sent some to her daughter. And she goes on and on and on about the lore of rosemary. And like I said, uh, it's one of the most historied and interesting plants I know of. And even from the Greek herbal, which is like the oldest English, I guess it's the second oldest English herbal. The first would be probably the Leech Book of Bald, and I guess you could include the Welsh physicians of Midfi or something. I can't speak Welsh. I don't even try. But the Greek herbal said that rosemary was good for weakness of ye brain, against weakness of the brain and coldness thereof, saith rosemary in wine. It was W-Y-N-E, but it's wine. And let the patient, spelled P-A-C-Y-E-N-T, receive the smoke at his nose and keep his heed warm. That means keep his head warm. It would be his heed, his H-E-E-D, warmy, like a ye olde English. All right, so medicinal actions and uses according to Miss Grieve. Rosemary was tonic, astringent, diaphoretic, stimulant. Oil of rosemary has carminative properties of other volatile oils, and it is an excellent stomatic and nervine, curing many cases of headache. It is employed principally externally as the oil, or spiritus, I guess it's distilled water of rosemary, actually, the spiritus rosmarini in hair lotions for its odor and its effects in stimulating the hair bulbs to renewed activity. Yes, rosemary can actually help your hair grow. It's been used as a cure for baldness or alopecia. In preventing premature baldness, an infusion of the dried plants, both leaves and flowers, combined with borax and used when cold, makes one of the very best hair washes known. It forms an effectual remedy for the prevention of scurf and dandruff. It's actually psoriasis and dandruff. The oil is also used externally as a rubefacient. It is added to liniments as a fragrant stimulant. Hungary water for outward application to renovate the vitality of paralyzed limbs was first invented for a queen of Hungary. I think I've told this story before, it's really fascinating, who was said to have been completely cured by its continued use. Remember how they said it was good for strokes and stuff? Well, yeah, paralyzed limbs. It was prepared by putting 1.5 pounds of fresh rosemary tops in full flower into a gallon of spirits of wine. Spirits wine is brandy, essentially. This was allowed to stand for 4 days and then distilled again. Hungary water was also considered very efficacious against gout of the hands and feet, being rubbed into them vigorously. A formula dated from 1235, said to be in the handwriting of Elizabeth, Queen of Hungary, is preserved in Vienna. Rosemary wine taken in small quantities acts as a quieting cordial to a weak heart, especially heart subject to palpitations, and relieves accompanying dropsy by stimulating the kidneys. It is made by chopping up well, we already told you, rosemary steeped in white wine. As she tells how to make rosemary tea, which is, you know how to make tea. Pour hot water, simmering water over your rosemary. Good remedy for removing headache, colics, colds, nervous diseases. Care being taken to prevent the escape of steam during the preparation. Very important. Many people make herbal tea wrong. They just pour the hot water over the herbs and leave it sitting there, and those essential oils, volatile oils, gas off. You actually want to cover that with something. Put a saucer on top. And then when you lift the saucer, make sure to pour the condensed vapor back into the cup, and you'll be much stronger, much more effective. And she says about making the conserve, being the freshly gathered tops with 3 times their weight of sugar, said to have the same effect. Spirit of rosemary used in 30 drops on a sugar cube was for a good antispasmodic. Rosemary and coltsfoot leaves are considered good when rubbed together and smoked for asthma. Very good old remedy for asthma. Antispasmodic, helps clear the lungs of congestion. Of course, I don't recommend smoking, but yes, herbalists have done it for hundreds of years. Rosemary is one of the ingredients in the preparation of eau de cologne, believe it or not. Father Nape, we mentioned him earlier. He was very big on rosemary. He said, would it not be a shame if this spicy herb escaped the attention of gatherers for household apotheca? It is an excellent stomachic. And he goes on and talks quite a bit about it. But we've really probably covered most everything that we need to talk about. So with all its amazing properties, you may think I would use rosemary in a lot of teas and tinctures. Actually, I don't. I just cook with it so a lot. I use it a lot, and I make that wonderful focaccia bread, which is heavily spiced with rosemary. But yeah, I probably should put together some rosemary wine or something like that, because it has such great antiviral properties. And a lot of those oils they do gas off in cooking. So it's one I need to make more use of. I need to make some little cordials of rosemary or something. And I think you probably do as well. I think we all probably do as well. As I often say with the culinary herbs, they're great if you grow them yourself. They're absolutely going to be better if you grow them yourself. But if you need some in an emergency, I would not bother ordering some from an herb company. I'd go to the grocery store, specifically go to the Mexican aisle, and I think you can get an ounce of rosemary in the Badia brand for 99 cents. And that's plenty they said you mix it in the wine and it's good within half a day. So be sure to have some on hand in fresh and dried form if possible. And it's sort of a no-brainer. You can find rosemary. So y'all, that's it for this week. Have a wonderful week. Go eat some dandelion greens. Help out my friend Alyssa if you can afford it and are so inclined. And enjoy really one of the most pleasant herbs there is to use, which is rosemary. And if you got to be mentally clear, I used to do this again on long drives when I needed to perk myself up a little bit. One way is to get a cup of coffee and a BC powder, which is aspirin and caffeine mixed together. Yes, I would do that when I was especially on long drives, but to really clear the mind and sharpen yourself up, sniff some rosemary. It works every time. Of course, smoking tobacco does as well, but I think rosemary is probably more helpful for you than smoking a cigarette. But hey, maybe you can smoke some rosemary. I have no idea. I've never actually tried it. Next time I have an asthma flare-up, maybe I'll try smoking rosemary. And if it works, I'll tell you. The old herbalist sure thought it did. Anyway, y'all, have a great week, and I will talk to you next time.
The information in this podcast is not intended to diagnose or treat any disease or condition. Nothing I say or write has been evaluated or approved by the FDA. I'm not a doctor. The U.S. government does not recognize the practice of herbal medicine, and there is no governing body regulating herbalists. Therefore, I'm really just a guy who studies herbs. I'm not offering any advice. I won't even claim that anything I write or say is accurate or true. I can tell you what herbs have been traditionally used for. I can tell you my own experience and if I believe an herb has helped me. I cannot nor would I tell you to do the same. If you use an herb anyone recommends, you are treating yourself. You take full responsibility for your health. Humans are individuals and no two are identical. What works for me may not work for you. You may have an allergy, a sensitivity, an underlying condition that no one else even shares and you don't even know about. Be careful with your health. By continuing to listen to my podcast or read my blog, you agree to be responsible for yourself, do your own research, make your own choices, and not to blame me for anything ever.